What's up, everybody? Cinephile Mike is here, and it is episode 8 of Oscar Rewind Season 2, my bi weekly series of videos dropping every Tuesday and Friday, where I revisit films that reflect the work of this past year's Oscar nominees and winners. I love digging deep into those IMDb profiles, and my hope is that you will discover a new, older favorite, or maybe revisit something you haven't seen in a while, or maybe steer you away from something. As always, I'll be discussing the Oscar connection, awards history for the film, the box office information, and the critical response. And as always, these reviews are spoiler free. But before we jump in, do me a favor, please click that subscribe button. You definitely want to be a part of all the cinematic goodness that's coming. You don't want to miss a thing. So, as I said earlier this week, I am looking at two horror films as we are just over that halfway mark to Halloween. So, why not? And they are still connected to those people, those producers who were nominated for Best Picture this year. Now, as we continue looking at the nominated producers from this year's top prize, we've seen many connections as well, and today is no exception. I'm talking today about Warner Brother Pictures' The Apparition, the first feature film written and directed by Todd Lincoln. Released in late summer of 2012, the usual wasteland for films expected to not do so well after the summer season highs and right before we get into award season, the film made only $4,936,819 domestically, with an additional $6,413,846 internationally, for a worldwide total of $11,350,665. Critically, I think this might be the lowest film I have discussed since I've started doing my reviews. I don't know if I've had any zeros or single digit numbers. I maybe should have fact checked myself here. But The Apparition, from its currently posted 61 reviews, has a critical rating of 3%. Single digit 3%. On the popcorn meter, the film is also rotten with a 24% coming from over 10,000 ratings. Higher than 3%, but still low. Award season wise, this film didn't even rate enough to even be recognized by the Razzie Awards. And according to IMDb, the film's sole nomination was for Worst Film at the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards, losing to Paranormal Activity 4. Not the first one is brilliant. So, why am I coming to you with this film on Rewind? Well, look, sometimes we got to talk about the good and sometimes the not so great. As we know, I don't like to say the worst. Nothing is really the worst. Everyone has to find what they like. And look, sometimes critically, there are things I don't agree with my fellow critics on, and I think things are great. Some things I think are, not so great are universally loved. So let's talk about our immediate connection, which is Alex Heineman, who is one of the producers of A Complete Unknown. He was part of the team that resulted in his first Oscar nomination for Best Picture this year. The nod comes 12 years after his first producing credit on this horror flick, which came after he had served as a production executive on Coraline and as an executive producer on Project X. Additionally, as I was planning this, did not realize at first, because I hadn't seen The Apparition before getting ready for this rewind, the film also starred Sebastian Stan, a skilled performer who earned his first Oscar nod this year for playing Donald Trump in The Apprentice, and also received wonderful acclaim for his equally impressive performance in A Different Man. So, is this film as bad as the ratings say? Well, let's talk about it here. The film opens with a descriptor about the 1973 Charles experiment, which is where a group of paranormal psychologists tried to contact a recently deceased colleague. This all loosely based on the real Philip experiment, something done in Toronto in the 70s. Here we've changed the name to Charles and we've tweaked it for our ghost film. So, just a little background. We see a bit of this attempt in the 70s before we jump to present day, or at least 2011 when the film was made, 2012 when it was released, and a new group of college students led by Patrick, played by Tom Felton, in the first of his two fully post-Harry Potter roles, who hope to recreate this experiment, and his team plans to use more advanced technology that we have so that they might actually be able to be more successful. Now, in doing so, they do connect with someone or something. And unfortunately, within this experiment, one of his team members tragically disappears, kind of gets sucked into the void. We then jump forward. We're not quite exactly sure how much time passed, and we're left to wonder what happened to them. But instead, we switch to young couple Kelly, played by Ashley Greene, and Ben, played by Sebastian Stan, moving into a new home purchased by Kelly's mother. They are there in this brand new housing development to monitor her mother's investment. So new that some of the houses are still being sold and still being built. Pristine. Now, as they are settling in, there are a bizarre series of events that occur. Dressers seem to move on their own. The counters are burned and scuffed and not able to be cleaned. Doors are opening when they were believed to have been shut. Newly purchased plants die very quickly. And even large bouts of mold start growing underneath tiles and underneath the house in the crawl space. Odd, given this is a new house. Now, as these things are happening and Kelly and Ben are trying to figure it out, Ben receives frantic warning messages from Patrick. So we learn that Ben was one of the members of Patrick's team when they brought whatever it is released, and now it is after them and all of those that freed it. Ben and Kelly try to leave the house, but whatever has latched onto them follows them wherever they go, to hotels, to stores. It's just with them. So it's not the house, it's them. Eventually, they have to reconnect. Well, Ben reconnects. Kelly meets Patrick. Begrudgingly, they work with him and they begin to engage in a new experiment to attempt to capture and purge their worlds of this entity that they released however many years ago. Patrick and Ben and their team. Okay, so here it is. Another malevolent story about an angry spirit. We have a bunch of these. Sometimes they're done well, sometimes it is not the case. The real big influx of these spirit films was really jump started again in 1999 with the Blair Witch Project, such an incredible film, and into the early aughts. And we did get some good ones. We had The Ring, we had Paranormal Activity, and then there were others that were, they made attempts. They weren't as great, like The Grudge, some that made the attempts and didn't land as much. And I'm sorry, Kristen Bell, if you ever see this, I love you, but Pulse? Eh, but now we've kind of moved past it when we get after 2010, and the apparition, while it was attempting, it had its best of intentions, it really misses that mark. It tries to rely on a few jump scares that are not really executed effectively, and you see them coming from a mile away. And unfortunately for the film's writer and director, Lincoln, this was his debut feature film, and according to IMDb, his last. Because since 2012, the only other sole credit he has for writing and directing isn't even a full feature. It's for directing one segment, Gorgeous Vertex, in the VHS found footage direct to digital video series, the anthology films. His was on VHS Viral, which I believe was the third one in the VHS franchise. And there's nothing else on the horizon for him. So maybe people did not want to back him after this. He did have a talented cast on hand. I mean, look, Stan is now an Oscar nominee, and he's done incredible work. Felton has done some fairly decent work over the years. This film was a misstep for them both. Green, I feel bad for, because I do believe that she has something. I mean, she has made a career for herself. She has booked roles. I just don't think of the work of hers I've seen, has found that right project yet. I mean, even the Twilight franchise, and I enjoy those films. They're like a guilty pleasure to throw on in the background sometimes. But even there, I don't always feel that she was that strong. And it's funny, going back to Stan for a second, there are times when you're watching him in this film, it's like he doesn't know he's supposed to be acting in a film. He's so aloof at what's going on. Felton, I would say, of that trio, is the strongest performance in these three, but even there, he's so limited and he's brought back into the film so late. This film is very brief. It's about 80 minutes, and it does not need to be any longer than that. So we don't get much from him. Here's what I'm going to say. The most impressive thing in the film for me was the real estate. I mean, this house that they shot in, when it wasn't, covered and moldy and like some of the after effects, but when we first see it, I mean, This is some gorgeous real estate. So my hat's off to the entire location scouting production design team. Huh. All right. Ultimately, you know, look, there's a reason this film isn't talked about even in the scope of bad films. This one kind of came out in the August month. It got buried. It vanished. I even looked to see how did this one escape the Razzies given the low ratings, and usually this is fodder for them. And ironically, it was Green's other 2012 film that really dominated the Razzies that year. That film, The Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 2, the last film in the franchise, won 7 of its 11 Razzie nominations, and even Green was nominated for Worst Supporting Actress for that film, ultimately losing to Rihanna for Battleship. So maybe it's for the best that The Apparition fell off the radar. And, as for Heineman, the main reason we're here, I'll get to another Sebastian Stan project later this season. I am happy to see that he has advanced beyond this. A Complete Unknown was an enjoyable film, and he actually served as a producer on several of the what I love to call the Liam Neeson revenge franchise, all of the different films of him being a wrong man. Again, some better than others. The three that Heineman worked on, Retribution, Nonstop, and The Commuter, they did their job. They're not as great as, Taken, but hey, he at least started to, sidestep this piece, so kudos to you. And he has 4 other films in on the docket. So we'll see if any of those, are able to match A Complete Unknown success. So in all, The Apparition for me, 1 star. Not worth the time unless you like some really beautiful real estate. But you can see that in many other superior films. However, if you are desperately curious to see this film, or you don't agree with me and you think this one is a good one, and you know what, you want to go watch it again, well, feel free. It is available for digital purchase or rental on most platforms. No streaming information as of this recording and posting. All right, so there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Oscar Rewind. Please make sure you click that subscribe button, like and share the video, get more people into the conversation. As always, you can follow me, Cinephile Mike, on all social media platforms and on Letterboxd, and find lots of great additional content on my website, cinephilemike.com. And stay tuned next week. I'm going to get away from the horror films, and I'm going to be bringing you 2 biopic rewind episodes that are actually made of some substance. All right, happy watching, everyone. And until next time, this is Cinephile Mike saying take a break and watch something new.